All right, we are live. So welcome everyone to another Matt Maran Motoring live stream here on the Matt Maran Motoring YouTube channel. I hope you're all having a great week here so far. Thanks so much for stopping by. So like all the usual midweek live streams here, we're going to go for 1 hour. I'll give priority answering. Then anyone does a super chat or a super thanks, as well as anyone who's a member there with the green usernames, they always get that priority answering. If you'd also like that, there's a link in the description. And I see we have Brian, Danny, Vishal, and Lanswath, and let me see, Timothy, Luke, and Mr. 705. So thanks so much for stopping by, everyone. And I also am being brought in a coffee.
Mr. Bond, your coffee.
Okay. What are you? You don't want me to grab it? Okay. Thank you. She's not going to join tonight, unfortunately, but I'm feeling a little tired here tonight. So she was very kind to bring me in a coffee. So. Anyway, I see Danny has the first comment here. He says, hello, only had one rare spot this week, a first-gen Toyota Prius. Getting dumped with over 24 inches of snow in New Jersey is not fun. My school district used our last 2 snow days, Monday and yesterday. Well, I hope you enjoyed the snow days. It's nice you actually get snow days because I heard someone else kind of talking about how like you don't really have as many snow days anymore these days, just for kids in general, because of all the remote learning stuff ever since COVID. It's not quite as much something that gets you off the hook as much as it used to. I remember, man, I lived for snow days in the winter as a kid. So that, hopefully you still got to have some fun and enjoy the time off there. And hopefully the snow wasn't too much of a pain for you guys. I think even like some parts like Rhode Island got like 3 feet, I think. It's crazy stuff. I hope you're staying warm and dry. And Michelle says, yeah, y'all got hammered with snow in the Northeast. Meanwhile, we're enjoying 70 to 80 degree weather in DFW. Yeah, we in Pittsburgh, we completely missed it pretty much. We got like an inch overnight last night, and we got like an inch or 2 the day before, but it was like nothing. So we missed that one completely pretty much. So I'm not upset about that. I'm kind of over the winter. I'm ready for spring, and so yeah, we'll see. With Pittsburgh, it's usually bipolar, and it's like we always get like our last snow in like the very end of April or early May, amazingly. But hopefully it'll be pretty nice weather here. It looks like it'll warm up next week. But Danny says, also, I don't know if you know this, Matt, but the Chevy S10 was built in New Jersey from 94 to 2004. The S10 pickup and Blazer were made in Linden, New Jersey, aka a 10-minute drive from my house. Oh, that's fun. That's pretty cool. That's I knew there was like some stuff in Delaware and a few other things kind of in that general vicinity that were built, especially by GM, and that's cool. And I wonder what they're using that factory for now. I don't know if you know, but that'd be cool to find out. And Danny also says the Traverse has not been enjoying the snow. Our driveway is a mess, and it suffered a minor bump when my mom tried to maneuver it into the driveway once. Oh no! Well, hopefully nothing too bad, and she can get it fixed up pretty easily. And he also says the banks made it stuck for a second, then it got out. Oh, gotcha, the snowbanks, which then caused the driver's side front fender plastic trim to pop out, and that was all. Gotcha. But when the Traverse was in the driveway, man, it was fighting for traction. Huge sheet of ice on our driveway. I can see the all-wheel drive system doing its thing. Man, yeah, I bet. Hopefully it helped at least a little bit there. Vishal says, Matt, are you aware of the 8-speed transmission issues Toyota's having? 2017 onwards, 8 speeds are failing, making noises that can't be fixed unless replaced. And Toyota hasn't recalled them or done anything thus far. Interesting. I hadn't heard about that at all, actually. So the 8 speeds, so we're talking like Camrys and stuff like that? Because, I mean, I'm kind of surprised because those have been pretty well proven, even with higher mileage. So I'm curious if there's any speculation as far as what's going on or why it's happening. I'll have to do more research because this is the first I'm hearing of it. And that's also, I guess, it's, I'm trying to just like wrap my head around that, but I don't know. Maybe it's just people that are now just coming up on a certain mileage amount that they didn't hit, and that's why this wasn't found sooner than 9 years or maybe even 10 years from some of the early 2017s, 10-year-old vehicles that are now having issues. That's strange. Let me see, but I mean, hopefully Toyota takes care of it. I mean, they're usually fairly decent about recalls and stuff like that. So hopefully that's something that they do handle, if it does turn out to be an actual widespread thing. But I can't imagine that would like go under the radar until now. Surely that would have had to rear its ugly head sooner if we're talking 2017 stuff. Now, if we're talking new gen Camry or something like that, I could believe, because it's like, okay, well, this is a little fresher. There's not as many with huge miles on them, stuff like that. But when you're talking about older cars that now all of a sudden have issues, that's a little odd. But I'll be curious to learn more. And Lancelot says, good evening. My spots this week are a black Challenger Hellcat, warm weather here in Montana, and a yellow Toyota FJ. Well, that's awesome that you got some nice weather there, and yellow FJ. It's always fun to see those. And Danny says, also, by the way, I figured out what tires the Bolt has on. It's the BF Goodrich Advantage Control. Nice. Yeah, BF Goodrich is, I think, is that the OEM tire for those? I'm not sure, but they're definitely a popular choice as well. And Michelle says, possible video idea similar to the Honda 1.5T vid you did. Oh, as far as covering that. Yeah, if it is widespread, more than happy to spread awareness about that. We'll see. Yeah, I have to do a little more research, but yeah, that the Honda video did great. So if there's some real volume there to the amount of complaints and stuff, and it's just as bad as the 1.5T thing, then I'll definitely have to cover that. Yeah, I appreciate the giving me that idea. And Danny says the Traverse all drive had its work cut out for it. The right front tire spun on the icy driveway, then caught the left, and then that caught traction. Then the back two caught, and it went up. So my mom was revving the engine a lot, and it was a whole slip and slide show. I have a lot to say tonight. That's also my ADHD doing its thing, which is me over explaining things and then not stopping until I'm forced to. I totally get it. I am very much an over explainer as well, as many of you have probably picked up on in my very lengthy videos, which I feel like YouTube, I mean, maybe it's kind of good for, people like us that are over explainers, because I swear I explain things so much, and I guess people just don't actually watch the video or pay attention, but it drives me crazy. That's all. The comments that drive me the craziest are whenever I am answering stuff that's in the video, and it's like people just click on and like immediately mute the video and then just like pretend it's a forum and just start asking questions and talking, and it's like, yeah, I answered all this in the video and I over explained the crap out of it and made it as, I think, as accessible and easy to understand as possible, hopefully. And I still sometimes get questions, and people, it's like, man, I still did not over explain this enough sometimes. And then of course there's other people that think I over explain too much. But anyway, I very much relate to that struggle there, Danny. So all good, totally get it. Let me see. Always happy to give you support here, Danny, and glad that Lancelot's giving you that support too. Let me see. So Timothy says, do you think investing in Ford stock is a good idea in 2026? I mean, well, obviously I can't give financial advice or anything like that, so this is my opinion. It's hard because we don't know timelines for things, and also, like, unless you're Tesla, like, all these car companies are so undervalued, in my opinion, or they're just accurately valued, and Tesla's the one that's super overvalued. But I actually, for a little while there, dabbled with the idea of like, oh, maybe I can, have a little stock in some of these companies and see, because I did believe in, the direction of a lot of them. I was like, oh, like, I think this company has a bright future. And I think that, it's something that's worth investing in. But like, they don't really move that much, at least in the short term. If you are, buying, something and you want to hold on to it for a long time, maybe. But I think, I guess GM I think like towards the end of last year into the first 2 months here, they kind of had a nice little, I wouldn't even call it a spike, but a nice little climb. So I don't know, maybe Ford could do something similar, but the thing is, yeah, they all move so slow, and, they don't have the hype around them that Tesla does. So honestly, I think if you're trying to, again, I'm a little more risky with like how I used to dabble in stocks. I don't do any of that anymore. I just don't have the time or the money. But I would be more interested in dabbling in like reverse Tesla stuff, or like if you're into puts, if you're familiar, do puts on Tesla, short selling Tesla, because I mean, they are not heading in a good direction. And I don't envision it getting any better. And I think that eventually the stock price will come down to earth. When that happens, I don't know. I mean, we're still seemingly like we're in this Wolf of Wall Street kind of phase with the tech stuff right now, and the stock market just being completely detached from reality. But, I have to think that there will someday be a correction. And if nothing else, I think that as much as I don't want to bet against tech, just with all this stuff going on with, the RAM shortages, with AI eating up all that stuff, I think it could actually implode tech on its own, just because they run out of chips, and then that domino effects into the car industry and consumer electronics industry and stuff. If you have these RAM shortages because they're just sucking down all of it with the AI stuff, and then I actually just read a really good article, kind of giving a newer update on the whole situation with China, and like they still really want to take over Taiwan, and like we still get an enormous amount of all our high-end chips from Taiwan. Now they're trying to build this factory in Arizona that I guess has started building, but it's only building like some of the lower end chips and not the top end chips. And so like we are still all completely dependent on Taiwan for any tech stuff. And if China decides, I mean, they've said 2027 or 2028 is their goal to start trying to, take Taiwan. I mean, if you're investing in the next 5 years, I would bet against tech. I mean, because I think all that stuff's just going to, I mean, not to doom and gloom here, but like, unless China's cooler heads prevail and they drop that idea, which doesn't seem likely, I think we're going to have a gigantic, colossal tech cluster, and probably a war as well, if these things don't get talked down. And so that's, if anything, I would be betting against, especially long term, against stuff, for the next, I guess not long, but like medium term. Long term, obviously, you buy and you hold, and eventually over decades, everything's fine. It depends on how much time you have to invest and all that stuff. But it's, I don't know. And so Ford could be taken down with that, along with every other car company. If, in a year from now, they can't get enough RAM chips, and enough RAM to build cars, we have another chip shortage. Wouldn't be good for Ford. So I wouldn't recommend buying it, but I mean, that's again just my opinion, not financial advice. I could be completely wrong about all that stuff. But the stock stuff does fascinate me a little bit, because I do actually have a degree in financial planning, so it's a little bit of that kind of coming out, I suppose. But yeah, I mean, your guess is as good as mine, because that's the hardest thing. Is I always approach the stock market from a logical standpoint, and the stock market is oftentimes the exact reverse of what logic dictates it should be doing. It's doing the exact opposite, and that frustrated me like crazy when I was trying to day trade very briefly. So it could be the exact opposite. They say, hey, look, the world's imploding. Let's have all the stock prices go shooting through the roof for no good reason. So I have no idea. Anyway, probably far more, again, over-explaining than you wanted, Timothy, but there you have it. And Lancelot, thank you so much for the very generous gifting there. 10 memberships that you gifted there. Yeah, a lot of, I think mostly new faces there too as well. So thank you so much for that. And I'm sure all of those people appreciate it. And of course, I very much appreciate the support as well. And Jay, also thanks for being a member for 29 months now. I really appreciate it. He says, hey, Matt, hope you and your family are doing good. Did you hear that they're finally stopping the making of auto stop start? Personally, it annoys me. He said, especially in his wife's MDX A-Spec. Yeah, so the stop start thing, I have an unpopular opinion about that. I know a lot of people hate it, and I think the important caveat, I mean, the 2022 MDX, I can understand. I mean, the two things I will say is, first off, a lot of people are basing their hatred of auto stop start on some of the earliest systems. The average car on the road is 12 years old. A 12-year-old stop start system that was back in the infancy of that kind of stuff, if it even had it back then. But the older stuff was really crappy with the way they implemented stop start. It sucked for sure. like a lot of first gen tech stuff does. Um, Modern stop start in most vehicles, I don't mind at all. There's a few exceptions, like Subaru's horrendous. It like shakes the whole car every time it turns back on, and it feels like if you're not like putting heavy pressure on the brake pedal, the car would actually like jerk itself forward. So I mean, there are still some where it's totally crappy. But then the second point is even in the cars where it is crappy, there's always a button to turn it off. And yes, it's one button. It's something you don't want to have to do, but it's not that big of a deal. So to me, that's not like some colossal achievement to get rid of that. And I think it's unfortunate for the vehicles where it actually does improve things and the people who do actually leave it on. Because I don't know about you guys, but at red lights, I hear a bunch of stop start stuff every time I'm leaving a red light, especially in the summer. You got the windows down and stuff. I hear a bunch of stop starts. And that is real fuel that's being saved. Now, it's a tiny amount, but you got to zoom out and say, okay, we are, saving 0.001 gallons every week or whatever. I have no idea, but just, to ballpark. But then you multiply that by how many cars are out there with stop start and how many of those average drivers don't give a crap and just deal with it. And all that gas that does get saved, it is an actual savings. And, they engineer it, so that it can put up with that wear and tear and stuff. So, and also one brief little thing, I will wade briefly into a political post for a second. There was like the White House thing saying, hooray, like we're getting rid of stop start. And it showed a stupid AI video of people sweating in a car because they had their auto stop start system apparently. And, the person in the car next to them was all cool and comfy in their sports car or whatever. And like anyone who knows cars knows that stop start doesn't work like that. Like its number one job is to maintain HVAC. This is why hybrids suck in the wintertime with fuel economy. This is why you always get worse fuel economy, especially in stop start stuff in the wintertime, because and even in the summer if it's super hot, because it's always running the HVAC and it can't turn the engine off because it prioritizes your comfort unless you tell it otherwise. So like that whole AI video, that never actually happens unless you tell the car to do that to you or you turn off the climate control. But like, so stop start doesn't do that. And you would think like car people that see that would like call BS on that, but I didn't see a single person calling BS on that. I actually saw some prominent car YouTubers that were, trying to, clout, farm, I guess, or, fish for likes and stuff by commenting on that and trying to, get some extra followers or whatever. And it's like, I don't know. I mean, you guys know I'm a straight shooter. Like, I just know stop start does not do that. Like, it just the whole thing, it makes no sense. But again, everything is detached from reality these days. So anyway, I will move on. But yeah, the auto stop start thing, I don't think is anything to applaud personally. I know it can be annoying and some stuff. Just hit the button and move on with your day. I don't think it's worth changing policy and wrecking the environment with all this other crap. They got rid of the endangerment finding this week and, just further adding to this free for all and everything. It's, I mean, there'll be more asthma attacks. There's going to be more premature deaths because of air quality and stuff. Like these things actually help, even if you don't give a crap about the planet, like they help your health. That shouldn't be a controversial thing that, your side of the aisle is opposed to. Like, don't we all want to be healthy? And like, we already have these things in place. It'd be different if we're trying to add a bunch of new crap, but like, it's just keeping the stuff that we're already used to. I don't know. Anyway. All right, back to cars, Matt, back to cars. So let me see here. Luke says, I missed Sunday because I had to get up for work at 4 a.m. I had to deliver to Neville Island. Yuck. Yeah. Neville Island, especially this time of year, not very pleasant. Speaking of air pollution, it's so stinky through there even still. I mean, before, the EPA turned into the non-EPA. But like, anyone who, no one knows this because this is just me and Luke, I guess, probably the only people here who've driven through Neville Island. It's here in Pittsburgh. It's so smelly that like you have to like turn your air conditioning to recirculating because you don't want to be breathing in the air when you're driving through there. It's just a giant chemical dumping plant. I mean, all these fumes and stuff. It's crazy. Like I used to work, whenever I was doing all the detailing at the Porsche, BMW, and Audi dealer back in high school and college, I also, for one summer, was also doing a part-time thing of being a package sorter for FedEx. And they had one of the people who came up who worked at the Neville Island division of that FedEx. They came up and were talking to us. And I kid you not, the lady that showed up, her voice was the deepest voice I've ever heard in my life. And she was like, just to get it out of the way before like we move on here, she's like, yes, this is my voice. This is what it sounds like after working on Neville Island for 5 years or whatever. I was like, holy crap. So bad, the crap that's in the air whenever you just let companies do whatever. But anyway, I apologize for your misery there, Luke, and hope hope it wasn't too bad. But anyway, let me see. Timothy's also asking thoughts on Explorer ST. I actually really like it a lot. I got to spend some time in one about a year ago. I did a review if you haven't seen that one. I like Explorer ST a lot. I think it's pretty well done, pretty well priced. It's for me, like, because there's not a whole lot in that segment. I would certainly take it over a Durango, SRT or whatever, I guess, or just regular RTs, because the Explorer is actually faster. You got the Blue Cruise, which is really nice if you're going to be doing a lot of long road trips in it. It's just more modern feeling, than the very dated Durango. So I actually like the Explorer ST a lot now. And this refresh they did for last year really smoothed over the interior because it had some rough edges and felt pretty cheap for the pre-refresh. But now with the refresh, it's a really nice interior. And actually now I really like the Explorer. They've also improved the safety of it in the past, several years here, because it's started off having a bad safety rating too for the new generation, but they fixed that too. So now I actually really like them a lot. But definitely check out my review video for the rest of my thoughts on that. Let me see. Luke says, I've already seen some of the new Jeep Cherokee at dealerships. Yes, I have as well. I debated jumping the embargo on that, and because I could have gotten into one like 3 weeks ago. And I just ended up being too busy with all these trips I had coming up and stuff. So I was able to do the Grand Cherokee before the embargo, but I wasn't able to get into the Cherokee just because of my own schedule. But yeah, they are showing up at dealers pretty quickly, and we'll see how it does for them. I think, I still need to do like my full analysis of it because I haven't done my review on it yet or anything. But, still seems a little pricey for, what it is. But I think, with the usual Jeep discounts and stuff, I think it could actually turn out to be a pretty good seller for them. Let me see. Vishal says, my rare spot is a Gen 1 Chevy Aveo. Had to do a double take. Wow, yeah, that's impressive because a lot of those, didn't last very long. So great to see one still out there. And Danny says, maybe when I get my own car soon, aka this coming spring, I'll have a part-time job at PetSmart. I do DoorDash driving on the side. Nice. Well, hope you've been enjoying doing that. And hopefully you can enjoy the PetSmart too. That'd be sure fun to be around animals all day. And Mr. 705 says his spot's just snow. Well, hopefully it melts quickly here. Hopefully you get some warm temps soon. But I can completely understand that. And let me see. Luke says, I think hybrids are the perfect up-level engine, responsive, efficient, peppy, etc. Yeah, and I mean, I think most people kind of agree. This is why they're so hot. And I think this is also, one of the reasons why I've been so just thrown by the fact that more car companies aren't doing hybrids quicker, and they're not trying to copy Toyota. Like you're seeing Toyota having these banner years and banner sales, and that hasn't been a new thing. It's been that way for a while, and everyone seems to really like hybrids. And even whenever you like force people into them with the new Camry, sales are still fantastic. New RAV4, I don't know if those have actually started to hit dealers quite yet, but I think it just barely, because a few of you said you've been seeing them. So they're starting to hit dealers. But I mean, if Camry's anything to judge off of, I'm sure RAV4 won't miss a beat just because they're all hybrid now. But I mean, people love that. And, a lot of these competitors, though, they don't either don't have hybrids or they're not very competitive hybrids. Especially the luxury segments. Like you'll see tomorrow, I'm going to be posting a review of the Lexus NX 350h. And that's another one. Like it's still the only regular hybrid in the luxury compact segment, which is a very crowded segment. It's still the only regular hybrid. There's a bunch of plug-in hybrids from the Europeans. But if you can't plug in or you don't want to be bothered with that, like the Lexus is your only choice. Like they have the entire market to themselves after, years and years. And it's been like this, for what, 10 years now the NX has been around. And this current generation's only been around for like, 4 or 5. But like it's crazy. Like no one is like jumping on this bandwagon. So I think some of them just thought they're gonna go straight to EVs, but like again, Toyota always had the right idea, like meet people where they are, and not everyone's gonna be on the same page at the same time. And let me see, Nicholas, thanks for stopping by. And he says, had a great time at a track day in Chuckwalla last weekend, learned a lot and had a great time. That's awesome. Glad you had a good time. And hopefully you had some good weather there for that at least. And it's great that when you learn a lot too, because that's the most enriching thing for me being on track. I mean, it's fun too, and you can certainly scratch that itch. But the educational component is what really, you can take those learnings into regular driving. You become a better driver. You get more confidence, and then you even have more fun the next time you're out on the track because you're less scared and you know more about what you're doing and you're getting better at that. And it does seem very, very gratifying. I wish I had more time and a car to actually these days, track myself, but I always enjoy the media programs where I can go on track. And I'm not going to spoil it, and I can't really talk much about it yet, but I will soon be doing a new thing that I'll be, again, you guys will be enjoying seeing my next little adventure here soon. But it's another bucket list kind of thing I've always wanted to do in the realm of performance driving that I haven't done yet, and I'm very excited to do that. So stay tuned. You'll be hearing more about that here in the next month. So yeah, stay tuned for that. But anyway, glad you had a good time. And that built the stuff in New Jersey there was torn down in 2008. Bummer. And Michelle says, any Toyota that uses the UA80 8-speed, so Camry, Highlander, I forget what other models. Okay. So yeah, I'm sure like ES would probably fall under that too. Interesting. Yeah, I'll have to look into that. And Mako says, what did you think of the E60 M5? They're starting to come out with the DCT conversions that are looking pretty good. I love E60. Even with the DCT, I always thought they were great. I think E60 is definitely my favorite generation of the M5. It's always going to be the most special because it has the V10. You had V8 ones, before, and you had the twin turbo V8s after. So it's the high watermark in my opinion. And it's also, to me, like M5 for the E60 was, big enough that it was comfy. It felt modern as far as its proportions and stuff. Because the E39 feels a little small by modern standards. So E60 still feels like it's actually like a mid-size sedan. And the iDrive is the only part that really sucks. I'm sure there's aftermarket things that tear that out and, put in something better, but that's the only component that's a bit obtuse. But other than that, I love E60 M5. I mean, you have the, the rod bearing issue in those that, same as the E92 M3, same kind of deal. Which, by the way, as far as M3s goes, I still think that's the most special M3 as well. But like, yeah, and if you can get it with a manual, swap or whatever, if that increases the appreciation for those, I'm all about it. But I don't think you need the manual to have fun in those. You also I think with that generation of DCT from BMW in general, you just had to know, or SMG, I guess it should be called. You just had to know how to drive it and how to, like, what you should expect out of it. And if you know how to use it so that it doesn't fall on its face, then it's actually really good. So you kind of have to give it that breathing room and think of it as a manual transmission as far as the reaction times, as far as when you upshift. You can't go bang, 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 bang like you would in a dual clutch, or same thing for even downshifts. You have to okay, like how quickly do I actually downshift when I'm going in a manual? And if you're approaching with that same kind of speed and the same kind of expectations, then it's completely fine in my experience. And I have a decent amount of experience in them, because not only did I review the E60, but I worked on them whenever they were brand new at the BMW dealer, and so I've experienced them brand new. I've experienced them in well maintained used shape, and I even had a couple of friends that had them and got to drive them quite a bit in the past. So I love E60 M5s, and I especially if you do, I think there's like an aftermarket rod bearing you can do to once you swap that in, then you're good. Like, so you don't have to worry about the motor blowing up on you. You don't have to worry about other weird stuff. I think it's like, that's pretty much the only thing. I mean, you might have electrical gremlins and stuff down the road in those, but or currently, because they're very old already. So, that's just anything European that's over engineered, that's old, you're going to have stuff that's expensive to replace and stuff. But, yeah, if they're I haven't looked at the pricing recently. If they're at good prices now, absolutely, I think that could be a solid buy, both from a fun right now standpoint, but also because I think they could be potential collectibles down the road as well, especially nicely kept ones and all that. But yeah, definitely check out my review on E60 M3 if you haven't. That was a really fun one that I did. I think back late 2019, I think is when I did that. So yeah, definitely check that out. And Old Chrysler, thanks for stopping by. I'm curious your thoughts on the Pacifica that leaked today. Or I guess it wasn't a leak because Chrysler posted it, even though it looked like a leak because they were just like their own amateur spy shots, kind of. But I got to say, I was hoping for more from the refreshed Pacifica. I didn't think it would just be a new nose and that's it. I mean, I'm hoping on the inside we got something, better. But I mean, the entire, or just Pacifica outsold the entire Dodge brand last year. So I mean, Pacifica's already doing really well. So maybe they didn't want to mess with a good thing too much. But a lot of people are immediately comparing it to the Kia Carnival styling, and I don't blame them. It's not like it's identical, but you can tell that's kind of probably where they got a little bit of inspiration from. And yeah, I don't know how I feel about it. I think it'll probably take a little bit of time to get used to it. And also probably some better pictures will help and seeing them in person too. But yeah, that was interesting. I really thought it was gonna be a more substantial refresh. But I mean, I think a fully new Pacifica's coming later this decade. So they probably need another 3 or so years out of that, and then they'll be good. So maybe they just thought that was enough. I don't know. Well, I'm sure we'll get more of the full story here soon. But yeah. Anyway, Michelle says Highlander and Camry subreddits are full of people's transmissions failing, either at making a whining noise or it fails completely. People who are under warranty get them replaced. Interesting. So if you're out of warranty, it's like 6 to 8 to replace it, and wait time to get replacements is about 4 months. Crazy. Huh. Yeah, I'll have to keep an eye on that and see. Yeah, I'm going to look into that some more and see. Yeah, like I just what mileages people are at when this is happening. So yeah, I mean, yeah, I won't try and speculate more. I'll have to just do some more research. But yeah, I appreciate the extra info. And I'll go on the Reddit threads there and check it out. Let me see here. Luke says, I wonder how cool a V8 CVT would sound. Interesting thing to ponder. Yeah, it would be an interesting sound. Probably would sound pretty good. I mean, because I think even some 4-cylinders with CVTs actually have a pretty good sound once they're in their upper ranges. So especially like a V8 that really screams in the upper RPMs, I think those would be especially good sounding. Like a GM small block V8 probably wouldn't sound that great because they redline at 6,500 or whatever. But like Coyote Mustang or something that's a little bit higher like that, screaming at those high RPMs really quickly, I think would be pretty cool. Yeah, it's a fun idea. And Danny says that Lexus did a V8 hybrid CVT in the late 2000s with the LS600 HL. 5-liter V8 paired with the 2 electric motors and a nickel metal hydride battery pack with an eCVT and all-wheel drive. Interesting. I wonder how reliable that setup was. I'm sure they maybe over-engineered it enough for that vehicle, but if they use the other eCVTs off the shelf, I'm sure that would probably be a struggle for that transmission. Interesting. I didn't know about that. Man, Danny's just full of all the fun factoids here. And let me see. Liam says, any thoughts or insight into next gen Mazda 3? It's been around for 7 years. Seems like it's due for a refresh, but I wonder if they will axe it in favor of focusing on SUVs. Yeah, I think you have the right hunch there. I don't know anything. And usually at these events, like like I was on the Mazda CX-5 launch last week, but they just had like the CX-5 team there. I mean, they had other, Mazda executives around and stuff, but they're not going to ever talk future product. And sometimes those engineers and stuff, you can maybe get a little bit more out of them. But again, they were just on the CX-5, so I don't know if they would have wandered into that. So I didn't do any digging on that myself, but I've been curious too about that. And I mean, I actually talked to a Mazda dealer, general salesman about this, or general manager, about this a while back. And they don't have any inside info either, but they're just like, I'm pretty sure they're just going to kill it off. And, but then Mazda makes comments every once in a while, like, oh, like if people buy more sedans, we'll do more of them, and I think if they do the same exact thing they did to CX-5, where they just stretch it, give you a bigger backseat, give you a little bit of a bigger trunk. I'd say they can spare the touchscreen, but I'm sure they'd probably want to put that in there. But you make it just basically all the same stuff as CX-5. You put it in the Mazda 3 there. I think that would do pretty well to do it kind of on the cheap and not do something more expensive. But I also still think it'd be fairly easy to just take CX-90 chassis and platform and powertrains and put it in a sedan shell and really just like, same interior, like everything, like really phone it in if that's what you have to do. But I think that, be a nice large grand sedan. And I think there's really hard competition as far as, with like, Civic, Corolla, stuff like that. But, and I think Mazda 3 had a nice edge there, and I think it still could, but I think especially, I know the volumes are lower for the larger sedans, but like, I think, with the way some of the other brands are going these days and some of their quality issues and stuff too, I think that Mazda could make a really nice like 5 Series competitor out of the CX-90, bones. And that would be really cool to see because it'd be a rear-wheel drive based thing. It'd be pretty awesome. But yeah, I have no idea. But they don't shy away from long lifespans because, it's 7 years for Mazda 3. But you look at CX-5, that was what, 2018? So, that's, that was 8 years. So I guess, we got another year at least for the Mazda 3 before we would expect anything possibly. And even then, I don't know where their head's at with that. Because I hope that they would see that, like, if you build it, they will come. Like, yes, Mazda 3 sales right now aren't great, and they could cling on to that and say, oh, look, see, we don't sell a lot of them, so we should just stop making it. But if you, again, it's because it has too small of a back seat and too small of a trunk, and hatch if you go for the hatch version. If they, improve those things, I think it would do a lot better. So yeah, but I have no idea, unfortunately. I'm sorry. Let me see. Danny says the LS600 was made from 08 to 2016. Wow, I didn't realize it was around that long. How did I not know about that? That's crazy. I guess it's just one of those obscure ones that flew under the radar. I don't think I've ever seen one of those either in my life, or I just didn't pay attention to the badges on the back. Did they not have the HL on the back? If they all just were badged as LS600s, then I guess it just went under my nose. But that's crazy. Let me see. B. Mitchell says, missed the boat for Ford stock as it's up right now. I have Ford Motor Company in my 401k since they pay a darn good dividend and always will due to Ford family. Nice. Well, that's good. Yeah, the dividends are certainly nice to see. Yeah, I haven't checked Ford stock recently, but if it's up a little bit, then yeah, then going back to Timothy's question, then yeah, that makes it even trickier because, if you're buying in when it's relatively stagnant, at least you can hope on it not moving, good or bad. But if you're trying to jump in and it's already up, that's usually a scary idea. It could keep going. You just never know. That's always the tricky thing about timing the market, which is impossible to do. And that's why, you're better off just not timing it and just buying in whenever you feel like buying in and forgetting about it for as long as possible, and then go back and look at it years later and see what's up. Let me see. Raphael, thanks for stopping by. And Danny says, yeah, it's really annoying in our 19 Traverse. It sometimes is so violent when it restarts the engine for the stop start. So yeah, if it's, annoying, then I would absolutely turn it off for sure. There's been many cars during my weeks with them, for press cars where, I turn it off if it's annoying. Even Beth's Mercedes, I'm pretty sure she turned it off most of the time because it was, again, just wasn't a well done system back then. So yeah, and that's why, again, every car company pretty much offered that option, and it's good to give people that choice for those who do get annoyed by, because you shouldn't be annoyed by your car every day. So if that annoys you to the point of and not enjoying your car as much, then just hit the button and turn it off. I think that's completely fine. It's a game of averages, and the giant amount of implementation and the amount of people that it doesn't bother, or they just live with it. And Danny says, yeah, more stress on the starter as well. Well, the starters are over engineered. They should be built for it. It's not like they just took an off the shelf starter from the pre stop start era and threw it in there. Like, every part is, rated or supposed to be rated for its, usage case, and upfitted appropriately. So I think, I wouldn't worry about that component of it. But I know, that's something that has been a popular, thing as well. People assume, that no changes have been made apparently. And, it's like, that's not the case. These engines have been, usually engineered for that extra stress. But Luke says, I got my contractor to get my receipts for new windows, installation, and siding for my taxes and got an extra $700 refund. Nice. That's awesome. Yeah, I'm going to have to start messing with my taxes here pretty soon too. I'm not looking forward to that because I always do it myself. And it's usually like a grueling 2 to 3 day process because my tax situation is a little more complicated. But I'm also one of these people where it's just like, it's hard to find an accountant that understands YouTube and car YouTube, which has more complexities and does that really well. So I'm just still doing it myself. But I'm glad you got a refund. That's great. And let me see. And Raphael says, fine, keep stop start, but make it a button to turn on, not off. But I think, again, that misses the casual drivers that don't bother with it. And that's where you're really gaining, is on those. Because if anything, if you are having someone, I mean, it's like with tech or anything, opting into something, you have a far lower take rate than opting out of something. So I think that's that's why you would have a way lower implementation rate and then a way lower effective gas reduction. And if you've just decimated that, then then you might as well just strip the whole thing out altogether. So I mean, yeah, I again, I thought it was fine the way it was. The rest of the world agrees. In Europe and all these other places, it's still set up that way, and everyone goes about their life, and it's not a big deal. But I know Americans usually have a little bit of a different viewpoint on that. But let me see. Danny says, another fun fact about the Ford Tempo. Ford offered it in all-wheel drive from 87 and then stopped at 91. It was offered with only the 2.3 and 3-speed automatic, added 105 pounds to the Tempo. Yeah, I do remember that. That is one of the few little factoids I do remember about the Tempo. And it was, smart that they offer that. I'm curious. I guess the take rate wasn't great if they got rid of it eventually. But, you would think that would have, been pretty popular. And Robert says, hey, bro, hope you have a good start to your year. I have a big question. I will look for it here, but I don't see it, Robert. But definitely feel free to ask away, and I'll keep an eye out. But Mitchell says, I'm more against the cylinder deactivation than stop-start, especially if it's a hit the deactivation once and done. The biggest ire with stop-start is more crap, weight, and complexity to cars. Yeah, I mean, I don't know how much more complicated it is, but like cylinder deactivation, that is more of a stress point for sure. Because I think, we have seen some more cars that do actually have issues with cylinder deactivation. This is one of the things in the current new Honda V6. They've been having, I guess, some cylinder deactivation issues, which maybe they won't have anymore if they just can strip out all that stuff and not try and engineer properly. They can just take the easy way out and say, oh, this is too hard. Let's just go back to the old stuff because progress is hard. So I don't know. Maybe that's how Honda will fix that problem in the V6s. But yeah, I mean, these are things that, again, engineers are smart people. They can figure these things out. I have confidence in them. Catalytic converters are really hard to figure out too. Fuel injection was really hard to figure out, and we figured it out. And we've been doing cylinder deactivation for a long time. So I think, for most stuff, again, it is mostly fine and works in the background when it's engineered well. But I think more so the complexity we're seeing with a lot of failure points in cars has to do with more of these advanced electrical systems. Look at all the stuff that's taken down RAM. Look at the stuff that has been more of an issue in some of these EVs that have more advanced electrical systems. You're going to these highly complicated zonal architectures, all these different things. That's where you have a lot of glitches. And to me, that's like been one of the biggest sources of unreliability is all the tech stuff, more so than the engineering side. And sometimes the tech kind of bleeds into that if you have tech that's, controlling some of that stuff. But like the RAMs, like the mechanicals of the RAMs seem to be mostly fine. It's just, they turn into basket cases and they had all these, glitches and things didn't work right and trying to roll things out that are half baked. That's the stuff I think is getting most of these car companies into trouble most of the time. I mean, there are still some of these hard point things like this Toyota thing that just got brought up tonight. Honda, again, not knowing how to engineer engines anymore. Those types of things, but yeah, we can all agree to disagree, I guess. I knew it was going to be an unpopular opinion, but to me, I don't think it's something that it's annoying to be going backwards in my opinion. But anyway, let me see. Danny says, take a drive through Staten Island, New York. It smells horrible. I've heard all the jokes about Staten Island, so I completely can agree with that. Heavy Mitchell says, negating the fuel savings, just what you don't need if you want less complex cars. I mean, yeah, obviously the simpler car, we can go back to 1960s technology and it'd be super simple and you'd have stuff that never breaks. It's just, where do you stop? Where do you draw the line? What is acceptable complexity and what isn't? I think that's everyone's different on that, but I think that's a slippery slope and it's a tricky argument because once you say, okay, yeah, like that's the goal, where do you stop? Where does it make sense to stop? And then again, you got to weigh the pros and the cons of, okay, we've stripped out all this stuff. Now the car is 1960s. Are there other things we miss? Are there things that we can't, strip out because we need to have other things that work properly? I don't know. I know, it's one of those things where the grass is greener on the other side kind of stuff, but like we've come a long way with cars and with, just the improvements to, again, air quality, things like that. And, it'd be a shame to just throw all that away because cars are having a moment right now because of the car companies. And again, a lot of this goes back to greed. Like if they hired the best tech minds and if they hired the best coders and the best people, you wouldn't have these, electrical glitches. If they actually fully baked stuff and had the right, amount of work going into this stuff and we're trying to rush stuff, you wouldn't have these things. Why is that Toyota transmission failing? Because they probably didn't over-engineer it. They went cheap on a part. A supplier dropped the ball because they were one of the cheaper suppliers, or, usually you follow the money and that, leads you to the right answer for a lot of this stuff. And it's just, I think it's the corporate greed thing is what's getting in the way of and is ruining cars in so many ways, I think. And I'm not looking forward to, the new direction with Toyota now having this new CEO who was the former CFO. Honda just did the same thing. They're appointing their accountants to be the CEOs. That never results in good engineering developments or exciting cars, because a lot of the most exciting cars come from engineering developments, not going back, 50 years. And so, I'm just like, that's why I was so bummed about, the Toyota CEO change and stuff. Cause like, it's just, like we'll have no advancements. Great. Maybe the cars will be a little more reliable, but they'll all be boring. It'll be the same engines we've had for the past 20 years, because that's the most profitable too. And that's the other component of this is like, sure, you can go back to super simple stuff, but the cars aren't going to get any cheaper. They're still going to want to keep the same prices and stuff. So it's just more profit to the car companies, the more stuff they strip out. Like the car companies, I'm sure they're very excited about stripping out stop starts, stripping out cylinder deactivation, because not only does it boost possibly their reliability scores or whatever, and they don't have to try hard anymore, but it also saves them a bunch of money. Those are extra chips they don't have to put in. They're not going to pass that on to you guys. You think every car is going to be dropped $1,000 in price next year because they dropped all these features? No, they're going to keep them the same price, probably raise the prices again, because that's what they do. They don't care. They talk out of both sides of their mouth. And so that's the other component, is like, if it was actually going to be going back into your pockets, okay, maybe it's something I can get behind, but it's not. It's going to go to inflating a giant, CEO salary and all this other crap. And I'm just, I'm sorry, I'm cynical about this, but I just like, if it's going to take away from public health and line the pockets of the people who don't need it. But anyway, we're getting ranty tonight. I apologize. I'm sure people will be just saying see you later and dipping out. But anyway, Robert, thank you so much for a super chat. He says, hey bro, love you, been a fan since day one. I'm staying with my 16 saying, well, first off, thank you for being such a supporter for all these years. He says, but staying with my EcoStang 16 feels more smart. She's my baby. Too much money put into the engine. What's a fun, easy gas 4-door car under 15 grand? Please, I only trust you. Love you. I appreciate that, Robert. So as far as fun, easy gas 4-door car under 15 grand, the first thing that jumps into my mind is my most favorite thing in that kind of a price range would be a Honda Civic Si. That means, when I say Civic Si, I mean the last generation before it went turbo. Once it went turbo, but before the turbos, the last ones of the VTEC, if you can find a nice clean one of those, but you can find, some under 100,000 miles still under, 15 grand. It's an older car, but it's easy to swap the head unit if you want to, add CarPlay and stuff like that. But I love those. They're a ton of fun. It's great on gas. It's very reliable if it's been maintained well. I've seen those go 250,000 miles plus. While still giving you, a nice high red line with the VTEC, fantastic manual. That's always like my go-to. It's also really easy. I'm not sure if your EcoBoost is a manual or automatic, but even if you don't know how to drive a manual, it's a very easy manual to learn on. And it's just a real easy manual to use. So I think that would be my top recommendation. There's other stuff for sure. As far as if you want, another little car that I thought was actually really underrated. It's not that, it's slow. It's not. So from a fun standpoint, it depends on if you enjoy like fun handling and you enjoy ringing out a car that's not super fast and driving a slow car fast. If you enjoy that mindset, I also really like the Scion IM, which then turned into the Toyota IM. Or Corolla IM is what it, for the last few years there. That's slightly newer, and those hatchback practicality is really good. They run forever. Again, it's like 130 or so horsepower. So it's slow, but you can get it with a manual. It's a really good little handling car. I actually reviewed one way back when and actually really enjoyed it. And those are definitely way under 15 grand, but really good on gas. Nice little car. It's not going to burn you. So I think that's another good one. And I'm trying to think of some more mainstream stuff. Honda Fits actually from that time period are a little iffy sometimes with reliability. A lot of people do have good luck with them, so that's another one possibly, but I'd probably defer to the Toyota and the Honda over that one. Let me see. I'm trying to think of others. Honestly, for something like that, I'd say you're better off, just sticking to those. I think those are probably some of the best ones. I don't think I can give you any better recommendations. There may be a few others if I look through a list or something. And definitely, if you want to dig into this a little bit more, Robert, feel free to either send me an email, message. I also do one-on-one consulting now through my website, mattmaranmotoring.com. If you want to book a call, we can have an actual video call and really get into this a little bit more back and forth. If you want to give me more context and all that. But hopefully that's a pretty good place to start. Let me know if you have any follow-ups. It says, I don't drive a manual. I want to learn. Well, then I think, Civic Si or the Scion IM would be great cars to learn on. It'd be really good. Also, another fun one, actually, I just thought of too, that even if you don't want to go for the there is also just the Scion XB, which did also even come with a manual still. And those, I mean, funky, and that's part of the fun in my opinion, but they're actually, pretty punchy. I did a brief test drive in one many, many years ago, back when they were new, and really enjoyed it actually. Quirky for sure. It's not a sports car or anything, but again, not going to burn you. They last forever. It's a Toyota. So that's probably another good one. And yeah, if I think of any others, I'll let you know. But yeah, thanks for the super chat. I really appreciate it, and hopefully it helps you out a little bit there. And Raphael, thank you so much for a super chat as well. He says, no politics here, but I can see car companies hating life if each new administration is 180 from the previous. Absolutely. And that's why, little things like removing stop start, like that's easy to do. They pulled that even with during COVID, if you remember, with the chip shortage for a brief period there. A bunch of GM trucks and stuff didn't have stop start, didn't have cylinder deactivation, and that's because they needed those chips, and they, those were easy things to pull like mid-model year to keep the supply going of the trucks. So those are easy things, little things like that. Again, they say, sweet, we save some money and we don't have to lower the price, and we reduce some complexity there. That's something they'll absolutely capitalize on here, and that's easy to put back in 2029 if they need to. But yeah, I mean, this is why car companies, they don't cater to an administration. Because the average product cycle is 5 years or more. The average development cycle before a car ever becomes reality is 5 years. And that's just like all these car companies right now, they're done with the 2020s. They're thinking, okay, let's plan for 2031. That's what they're planning for right now. So, again, it's a zoomed out approach, and that also helps them to have stability even when there isn't stability there, because it's like, okay, like this is the way things are right now. I'm sure with them, mitigate these tariffs and do these little things, but they can't make any big changes. Same thing with the factories, despite what some people in charge think. You can't put up a factory in 90 days. It takes 3 or 4 years. Look at this Scout factory. I filmed the Scouts when they first announced that and broke ground. That was what, was that fall of 2024? No, I think it was fall of 2025, or sorry, 2023. I think it was fall of 2023. I don't know. Anyway, it's been several years now. The Scout factory's been under construction, and it still isn't going to be ready until like a year from now or more. It takes a long time, but anyone who's breaking ground today, that's not going to be done until after Trump's out of office. So like, they just simply cannot pivot, whether it's car products, factory stuff. They can't do it fast enough. So there's no point in trying. So that's why they just say, okay, we don't care what's going on, as far as product planning goes. They just, and this is why, same thing with these Toyotas. They're seeing all these electric Toyotas. These electric Toyotas, they're not like choosing in 2026, this is a great time to launch these EVs. Obviously, they know it's a terrible time to launch these EVs, the worst possible time to launch these EVs, but that they have to stick to their plan. And this plan was set in motion 4 or 5 years ago, whenever EVs were hot. It was the up and coming thing. And that just is a prime example. It took them, 2021, they're like, hey, okay, we got to do this EV thing. And, now we are seeing the fruits of that. But they've already sunk however many millions of dollars into this. They can't just write that off and walk away. And I think they also do believe it's an important part of their portfolio. I don't think they're full of crap on that. So I think they're going to stick with it for that reason too. But if they had their pick, yes, this is absolutely not what they would have chosen to launch with timing wise. So that's the prime example. This is why, if people don't realize or don't know how the industry works, they're like, wow, Toyota's crazy. They're launching EVs at the worst possible time. And it's like, yeah, it's just because of the way it works. So yeah, that's why, and this is why when you ask the executives, when I've asked some executives and you've heard, the interviews with them about tariffs and stuff, they're like, well, we'll pay them if we have to pay them. And, and this is a prime example. Now they might be getting refunds on some of this stuff. I guess the auto industry stuff won't be affected by, the tariff shakeup here, but they're like, we'll pay them if we have to pay them. We're going to we're not going to undermine our consumers or our dealers. Like we still need to ship cars. And so we'll just deal with it and write it off or whatever we need to do. But again, they can't change that. So it's just like, all right, well, this is something we're going to pay and figure it out, eventually. So it's, yeah, all that stuff is just, Yeah, it's going to make it hard for business. And this is why, the car industry, if you've looked at the past 15 plus years, even going back to whenever Obama was trying to increase, fuel economy standards, car companies said, we don't really care what these standards are. We just need to know what the goal is and what we need to bank on. And you give them that goal and you give them the carrot of, this is why you should do it. And also you give them the prodding of, if you don't do this, then you will be fined with cafe fines, and those two things, motivate them to say, okay, well, this is where we need to get to. And, look at the giant, increases in fuel economy, the giant increases in all these hybrids and stuff, in that time period. It's just, you have to have that stability. That's what car companies need. That's what any business needs. You need to know what you can bank on. Same goes for the stock market. You need to have stability. You need to know what you can invest in and all this stuff. Any kind of, volatility is not good, unless, again, you're a day trader. Anyone else, it doesn't benefit from volatility like that. So, yeah, it's going to make it hard for these car companies. But a lot of them donated some money to political organizations, so they kind of did it themselves. So I don't have too much sympathy for them. But anyway, all right, we're almost at an hour here, so we'll do lightning round here for the end, and then we will head on out. And I'm sure most people are probably more than excited for me to shut up tonight at this point. But let me see here. Where were we? Danny says, yeah, the cylinder deactivation has caused the problems with the Odyssey. I was just talking about that too. And Corvette says, my dad has his list of cars that are in the final four: Lexus RZ, Mercedes CLA, Q6, and even if it's not electric, he also has the A5 on the list. Nice. Yeah, all those are great vehicles. From my experience, I haven't driven this new CLA yet. RZ, I haven't done yet either, but it's based on the BZ, so I'm not expecting it to be too much different. But yeah, all great choices, and looking forward to seeing what he ends up narrowing it down to there. And Decepticon, thanks for stopping by here. And Section says, just joined and didn't watch your 70 video yet, but I've had mine for 19 months now, and it's been a great car, wildly underrated. Well, I'm glad you enjoy your CX-70, and that's great to hear that it's treating you well. And I agree. I do think they're underrated too. So I'm glad you're enjoying yours. And Decepticon says, which of these Ferraris do you like the most out of the three? 12 Cylindri, 849 Testarossa, or F80? 12 Cylindri for sure. I love that V12. And 849, the Testarossa thing is a little weird to me. I'm not into that really. F80 though, I do think is actually really cool. I know it's kind of, a lot of people aren't into it because it doesn't have the V12, but it sounds pretty close to a V12 still to me. And again, after experiencing, a lesser version of that powertrain in the 296 GTB, I'm a believer in that, twin turbo V6, the hybridizations they have in that and stuff. It's fantastic. It's so freaking fast. it's like, and it's not even like from a stop, like, the acceleration from a stop, whatever, but like that thing's got some guts whenever you're at like 60 and you punch it, like, it's wild stuff. And that's just in the lowly 296. So at F80, I couldn't imagine. That'd be like a dream track toy. If I was insanely, obscenely wealthy, that would be the way to go. Yeah, I think F80 is cool. And Vishal says, took my car to the shop today. They found an oil leak and a transmission leak. Those are getting addressed in addition to the oil change. Had to leave the car there. They paid for my lift home. Well, that was nice of them, but that really sucks. Wow, you're getting two leaks the same time. Hopefully they're easy fixes and cheap fixes, but that's definitely not great to hear. And sorry to hear that, Fischel. And B. Mitchell says, what, Beth is going to let you do dirt track figure eight racing in a GR Corolla? Yeah, drink. Fair enough. I will join you on that. No, unfortunately, it does not have to do with GR Corollas or figure eight drifting, or figure eight racing, but something very cool. Some of you might be able to kind of get in the ballpark, I think. Let me see. The E60 B Mitchell says M5s are already collectible in Europe. In fact, they want US market 6-speed manual cars since that's the only market that got them. Even the 6-speed conversions do better than SMGs. Wow, interesting. Well, that's cool. So I guess, fancy. I wish I had the money to invest in cars because I feel like I would have a decent eye for that. Because that's a car. Yeah, I totally would have picked one up. If I had the spare garage and money and all that kind of stuff, just to like mothball one of those. Because yeah, they are fantastic cars. And section says yes, do a video on the UA80 like your Honda video. Toyota 100% is covering it up. They're saying 3 to 4% failure rate, which is double the 3.4 in the Tundra, and it's almost triple the production numbers. Interesting. I'll have to look into that. That's yeah, and also the thing about the Honda thing that really drove me crazy was that it was an ongoing thing for a long time. Like the class action lawsuit's been around for a while on that, and Honda still isn't caving. Now, if people are putting pressure on Toyota, and I can maybe help with that a little bit, maybe that'll cause them to, fix it before it gets to be as bad as the Honda thing. But I think because of how fresh potentially this is, I don't know, it seems like it's kind of a new thing. That's not quite as egregious. And it does take time to properly formulate a correct recall. So again, I don't know when these issues started happening on a large basis, but like, I mean, this is something even with the Mach-E. Whenever the Mach-E was having this stuff where we're starting to get stranded, and they were coming up with these issues with the converter box that converts from high voltage battery power to low voltage battery power, that was leaving people stranded. Like Ford was like, oh crap, like this is really bad. These cars are actually being stranded, like bricking in the middle of a drive. They desperately were trying to do a fix, and like they wanted that fixed yesterday, but like it takes time to say, okay, well, what is the fix going to be? How much is this going to cost? Is there a cheaper fix? And like trying to figure that out, because again, it has to come down to money. How much is it going to cost to implement the recall? And then how quickly can you actually get this recall done and get that out? Now they could still, acknowledge an issue, and maybe that's, kind of the more egregious thing right now if they haven't done that. But, a proper recall does take time, and sometimes it might sound like silence or them ignoring the issue, but it could be that they're working on it in the background, but they don't want to speak too hastily and say something wrong or incorrect. And so instead they just stay silent, hope it doesn't, blow up in their face in the meantime, and then properly do something. I think the thing with the Honda was like they clearly had years and years and years to do that and didn't, and continue to use the engine, continue to throw it under the rug, and dismiss people and not cover their engines and stuff. And that's what really, I think, pissed me off the most about that one, and really showed this more sinister side of that potentially, again, my opinion, but like that's to me, yeah, I don't know what, I guess have to see again how this plays out with the Toyota thing, but I'm not quite ready to throw him under the bus just yet, hearing the information I've heard so far. Because again, it does take time, and you don't want to jump to conclusions until there's been sufficient time. Because again, like all these things in the car industry, they take forever. And so, but if this has been going on for years, then that's where it's like, okay, well, you had time, you didn't do it. So I'll just have to see how long that's been going on. And B. Mitchell says, yeah, the SMG cars, the M5 are mechanical and electrical nightmares. Interesting. Let me see. Michelle agrees about there needing to be more coverage there. And he said, yeah, okay, interesting about the car care not saying not to buy anything with that transmission. Crazy. Yeah, I'll have to look into it. And Michelle says, okay, there are multiple class action lawsuits going on with it. Another one came out in the past week. Okay, well, if it's been long enough that there's multiple class action lawsuits already, then okay, maybe they have been covering it up. Interesting. I'll have to look into that for sure. All right, yeah, people are saying, yeah, this was something others have been discussing here since 2023. Okay, then maybe it is. That's crazy. And Nightbreaker, thank you so much for stopping by. I'm doing okay here. Hope you're doing all right too. And let me see. I wish I was worried about his TX possibly having a similar issue. Interesting. Yeah, I mean, because that's if the UA81 is the same kind of problem, I mean, geez, like the Grand Highlanders, like, I mean, that's everything that would be an enormous issue. So I'm curious to see how that plays out. Because if Toyota goes, I mean, then it's like, where do I go? And I want to recommend something reliable to somebody, because there's really not a lot at that point. Yeah, I'll have to see. Let me see. And So someone else complaining about their 2.4. B. Mitchell says TurboTax self-employed package. Yep, that's what I do. It is very tedious. And Rain says, how do you think Mitsubishi Lancers hold up today? I just love the look of those. Lancers, a regular base Lancer, probably okay if it's been maintained well, which, you have to have a lot of faith that, Mitsubishi owners are not known for being very good with maintenance because it started as a cheaper car. People skimp on maintenance more on cheaper cars. It's just kind of the way it goes. So Evos, now if you can get like a nice clean, one owner Evo or a really nicely done Evo, it's been really meticulously maintained, I think it could be good, but they do have their limits for sure. Same as the STIs and stuff. Once you start pushing them, they're going to start falling apart and having more issues. But stock should be okay. Again, depending on the maintenance, but I think it's going to be hard because most of them are probably not maintained super well, and you're probably not going to have a great experience if that's the case. So I'd be a little nervous about those. I certainly don't have the same confidence in those as I do in, Civics or Corollas of the same time period. But I know what you mean about the look. It is kind of a cooler look. So Section says there was a TSB about Toyota acknowledging they didn't tune it right. It helped the trans performance some, but I doubt they did much for it to accept more torque there. Interesting. Well, if they at least acknowledged an issue, that's better than Honda at least, but maybe that's not enough though, obviously, if they're still having issues. And Lancelot says we all need to go out and buy a GR Corolla. Cheers, I guess. And hey, yeah, I wouldn't be upset if more people bought GR Corollas. And all right, last few questions here and we'll head on out. So Pichka says, should I buy Integra Type S? Seems like it's the best overall package for 45-ish or less. So I'm guessing you're talking used, right? If you're getting 45, for an Integra Type S. Integra Type S is great. Unfortunately, it is also under the same kind of iffiness that I feel about all these Honda engines recently. The 2.0 is certainly better than the 1.5T, but the 2.0T has had a few issues as well. I think they're fairly rare, so I don't want to, completely discount Type S as a result of it because it is really, really good. If you're asking my opinion about other things for 45-ish grand, just drink again because I'm going to say GR Corolla. But yeah, Integra Type S is a great car. It's a lot of fun. I think the connected nature. Steering is, you feel so much through the steering wheel. The shifter's fantastic. And the handling is amazing. It's a really, really well done car, and I definitely like it better than better than Civic Type R. So yeah, I like Integra a lot. I could run through the other options at 45 grand that I'd consider, but that's definitely one of the higher ones for sure. I think that kind of price range, though, you can get a Cadillac CT4V Blackwing for that money too, which is an actual sports sedan. Integra Type S is very impressive, but it's still front wheel drive. If I was 45, I'd probably go CT4V Blackwing personally, because it has, in my opinion, actually an even better manual, believe it or not. That Tremec in the Blackwing is phenomenal. The rear wheel drive balance is really fun, in my opinion. So that probably would be what gets my money at 45 grand. Again, if we're not going GR Corolla, but Integra Type S is a great choice still, I think, though. And I would just say, if you are going to get one, definitely just do an extended warranty for the engine, give you some peace of mind a little bit longer there. Michelle says, hopefully you're able to do some more of your own research and make the video about the Toyota issues. Failures and issues seem to happen anywhere from 50,000 mile range onwards. Interesting. Yeah, I'll definitely do some more research on that and see if it's something that gets me wound up enough to rant about, or something that's important to bring more awareness to there, which it sounds like it is. And Old Chrysler says he's loving the new Pacifica refresh. CEO promised a new infotainment system and a newly styled interior to make up for the fact that it's just a refresh. She said a new PHEV system, but we'll see. Interesting. When did she say? I'm curious when she said the new PHEV system, because they just canceled all the PHEVs, obviously. So that would suggest they're backtracking on that already. I would be surprised about that, but Maybe they just want to kill all the old PHEVs, and then we'll have new PHEVs. Not counting the range extender stuff, still planned for the Wagoneer, I think. But interesting. Yeah, I mean, infotainment system, it's going to have to be a next generation thing that we haven't seen yet, because everything else is still running Uconnect 5 that I know of, I think. So that could be interesting if it's, the first to get something new, although that could also, be a little iffy as far as reliability too. We'll see. Let me see. Section is talking about, the failures again here started on its release, but the whining and the more specific catastrophic failures are manufacturing defects starting in 2020 until 2022, with the majority being centered around 2021. Interesting. Okay. So now that sounds like a supplier issue more so than an engineering issue. If it's the same design and just a specific model year or so that is actually having issues. So, I mean, still not great. But, like with the Honda thing, it actually calls into questioning their, actual engineering. But if it's, the UA80 is solid in certain things, but it's not in others, and especially just a time period thing more so than even a car thing, then that to me tells me supplier dropped the ball somewhere along the line and then remedied it. But maybe they thought it would be fine, and that's why they didn't talk about it more. And trying to sweep it under the rug there. And now they're realizing maybe they can't get away with that as they see it starting to, lead to more issues there. But hopefully that means then, it'll be okay for more modern stuff, which would be good. Apparently there's, the replacement units can also fail. Yeah, well, because that's the other important thing about recalls and that whole process is if you aren't actually recalling it, then you're not actually changing things. You're just fixing people's cars. But if it's the same flawed design, that's going to do it again. That's the same thing with like the Mach-E's. Whenever they previously, before the software updates, they just were like, oh, we'll just put it in a new junction box and it'll be fine. Nope, still popped. Same thing, Hyundai's having this issue, Hyundai and Kia, with the iCCU issues and the Ioniq 5 and EV6, where sometimes it just pops and leaves you stranded. And they just put a new one in, but they're like, they're not changing the design. The refresh didn't change the design. And so it's like, okay, well, this is just going to keep happening if you're not going to change it, which is the real crazy thing. Because especially when you're talking about new production, you have an opportunity to like, okay, let's stop the bleeding. And instead you just keep on choosing to bleed out. It's like, why would you do that to yourself? I get that it's hard to change things from a supplier side and re-engineer a part, but like, it's certainly got to be cheaper than just doling out warranty replacements for the rest of eternity. Let me see. Nightbreaker, thank you for the super chat here. He says, are water pump issues still a thing with Volkswagens? I believe so. Last I heard, it still seems like, death, taxes, and water pump issues in Volkswagens are like the three constants in life. I think, because even people are just talking about this on my more recent Volkswagen reviews in the past several months. Personally, with all these issues they're seeing with other brands and stuff, if the Volkswagen is mostly solid mechanically, aside from a water pump, I can live with that. If you got to replace a water pump once or twice in a car's lifetime over 12-year ownership or something, to me, that's not bad enough to say, oh, I'm not going to buy a GTI or I'm not going to buy a GLI or something like that. Now, there's other issues with Volkswagens, like the Tiguan Turbo right now is a complete mess. But, with the known quantity stuff, to me, that's why I'm actually a pretty big fan of Volkswagens right now, because, I'm seeing the disappointments with Honda, possibly maybe with Toyota as well, but especially with Honda and stuff. And it's like, okay, well, I used to just say I'm going to get a Civic Si, but now it's like, if I'm in that segment, I'm getting a Jetta GLI. And I think it's, again, picking your battles and, things you can live with and things you can't live with from a reliability standpoint. Like, I can live with the knowledge that someday I'll have to replace a water pump. If that's all I have to worry about, I can live with that, But yeah, I think that is still a thing unless something new has changed. Let me see here. And the section also says, man, you got a lot of info here. I appreciate this extra context. He says, as far as the Toyota thing, it's only high torque models like the V6. This is going to be, man, if I was a Nissan executive right now, I would be feeling so smug because they got dragged through the crap for years about their V6 paired with the CVT. And now, if the V6 is the problem, particularly, or this high torque stuff with the automatics in Toyotas, then expect this UA80 thing to haunt them as bad as the Nissan CVT, crap. Which I mean, they got rid of that transmission like 10 plus years ago, and there's still people that comment on a 2026 Nissan review and say, "Oh, crappy CVT." Nope, it's been gone for 10 years. So that may haunt Honda or Toyota for a long time. And speaking of Nissan, I think they actually make some pretty reliable stuff these days because they've learned their lessons and learned not to cheap out on transmissions. I don't know. Not saying I'd, say a Nissan's more reliable than a Toyota just quite yet, but it may be going in that direction right now. And the people who learned those lessons early and took it on the chin early, maybe they're the better ones to go with now. I don't know. We'll see. But I certainly am rooting for the underdogs here with Volkswagen and Nissan. And let me see. So Nightbreaker's asking about the Golf R. I believe that, also water pumps eventually. And Old Chrysler says, as far as the Pacifica, she also said she wanted to make Stow and go with the hybrid, but I don't think that's coming if they're done with hybrids. But if the all-wheel drive already had Stow and go, she definitely said hybrid. I think with they may do a regular hybrid, and I think, for example, they could just use the Cherokee powertrain, honestly. I mean, look at what Toyota has to work with in the Sienna. It's 240 horsepower. I think, isn't that about what the Cherokee does? I could completely envision Cherokee powertrain being thrown into Pacifica. And then you probably would still be able to do Stow and Go, and you have the hybrid, and follow the ones that are doing really well with that, with Toyota. So I don't know anything, but if I were a betting man, I would say that's probably where I'd put my money as far as any kind of powertrain innovation for Pacifica, maybe hiding under the hood there. I'm sure they'll still probably have Benta Star too, and just kind of do it similar to how Kia does, where they have the V6 and the hybrid. But that would be my bet as far as that goes. And you said the new hybrid system when being interviewed on Autoline 3 months ago. Interesting. Yeah, well, then it's got to be the regular hybrid for sure. And let me see here. All right, I think we're almost caught up here. Nightbreaker's asking if a water pump is expensive to replace. I don't know exactly how much. I don't think it's astronomical. But yeah, I'm not sure. And that's something, again, if it is a higher dollar part, then, again, try an extended warranty, it instead, and, cover it that way. And you're more than welcome for the feedback there, Nightbreaker. Section says arguably the only Toyotas to buy at this point are the eCVT-based hybrids. The hybrid Max stuff has some issues and refinement problems. They got 2 decades plus of doing the eCVTs. Yeah, I mean, and that's always been the safest bet for any of the Toyotas. You're right, because they've been doing them the longest, is all the hybrid stuff, which, going back to our discussion earlier about complexity, Toyota's kind of seems like they've proven here recently that extra complexity doesn't have to mean an unreliable car. You can have a phenomenally fuel efficient hybrid with doing stop start, doing all these more stressful things, and doing it really well, and doing 200, 300, 400, 500,000 plus miles on these things flawlessly. And that goes for modern stuff too, not just the old stuff. Like there's actually a guy that did medical courier work here in the Pittsburgh area that had a RAV4 hybrid, had 420,000 miles before he hit a deer and totaled it, I think. So, I mean, again, that's an isolated anecdotal story, but like I have full faith in that, eCVT hybrid combo from Toyota, and especially if that is the only reliable one to count on these days from them, then expect those hybrids to do even better going forward. If that's the safe bet there for everyone. All right, well, I appreciate all the great insight tonight here, everyone, and I always learn so much talking to you guys as well. So thank you so much for educating me and bringing awareness to things that I'm, not seeing, because I'm always having my nose to the ground here, doing everything else, and sometimes stuff passes me by, and I'm not as tuned into the post-sale world as a lot of you guys are. So I really appreciate you bringing awareness to these things for me. Let me see. TFL is talking to people about the buybacks of the Tacomas there. Interesting. And Vishal says, that guy has a Land Cruiser now. Yes, he does. With the 2.5, 2.4T hybrid. So that guy. Yeah, he's pretty legendary. I haven't followed his posts recently. I gotta check in and see, he's up to now. But I knew he had the Land Cruiser. So it's great to see if that's gone 100,000 miles already. That's awesome. I swear, like whoever these car companies, whoever he or whatever he wants to drive, I hope these car companies like take his cars after he's done with them and like, analyze them and study them. But like that's the best endorsement is like a guy like that can do far more to, convince buyers than even, the largest YouTubers can, because if you see someone actually out there racking up these huge miles, that's really encouraging. I mean, obviously age plays into the reliability as well, but as far as mileage goes, like, that's a huge, huge thing just to see even just one do that kind of mileage in a very grueling circumstance. That gives me a lot of confidence. And confirmation says, have you driven a manual Tacoma and what is it like? I'm not a fan of losing the V6. I have actually. If you go back and watch my initial review of Tacoma on the launch event, they had a manual there and I was able to drive it. So I do have a segment in that video. If you go to the timestamps, I have a segment for the manual drive. Definitely check that out. I give a lot of thoughts on it. It's not a great manual, but it's the only manual in a truck you can get right now and probably forever. So, it's one of those things, beggars can't be choosers, I guess. I think it's still fun. My brother-in-law has one. He bought a manual Tacoma. He loves it. The new Tacoma. He got the TRD off-road. He really actually enjoys the manual in it there. Now, he hadn't had a manual for a little while, so he was really excited to get back into one. So might be a little bit of novelty there as well. And he previously had another truck with a manual, so it wasn't like he was driving a manual, sports car or something where he's used to good transmissions. So his bar might be a little lower for what impresses him for a manual, but he enjoys it though. So I think it's worth investigating. Section says, is it the brown one? I thought that the medical courier that has the Land Cruiser had a blue one, but I don't recall. He's on, I can't remember his username. He's on Reddit. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe Vishal knows. I don't. Maybe it's no. Yeah, I don't know what his username is. But anyway, all right, we will head on out here. And confirmation says they make a cob access port for the Tacoma. Interesting. I didn't know that. That would probably turn it into quite the hot rod. It's already really quick, and you do that. That could be fun. Assuming again the car holds together. But anyway, thank you all so much for hanging out here for almost an hour and a half now we've been going. Hope you've enjoyed this stream, and apologies to those of you who I might have annoyed with my unpopular opinions tonight. But I'll see you guys on Sunday for the next one here, and stay tuned again for more good stuff here this week, and maybe even a video on that Toyota stuff if I have some time to dig into that here. But anyway, thank you all so much, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Take care.